Alrighty, we call this to order at 8:01 Central Time. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. Mr. Montoni, would you please do a roll call?
You're gonna have to give me a minute. I wasn't prepared for that.
It's all right.
All right. I'm not in possession of a master list. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the roll that was called off at the last meeting. And if you look in the minutes draft document for today's meeting, in fact, let me go ahead and put that up. All right, I've just put the link for today's meeting minutes in the chat window. You'll be able to follow along as I make changes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read each section as it was done last time. And if you're here, simply say aye. And what I'm going to do is change the color of the names to reflect whether they're present or not. So Alvestad from California.
Present.
Okay, let's change presents to blue. Barber, Ohio.
Present.
Mr. Secretary, are you sharing the screen, or do you intend to?
No, but if you click the link that I just put in the chat window, you'll see these changes as I'm making them. It should show up in your browser. I don't have the ability to share my screen.
Yeah, it's better if you follow his live notes anyway, then the screen can be used for other purposes if necessary.
Thank you, Matt. Bergman, Illinois.
Present.
Brooksbank, LNC.
Aye.
Choco.
Here.
Enzor, PA.
Here.
Johnson, Texas.
Present.
LaBrie, Colorado.
Aye.
Leatherman, New York.
Here.
McCose, Alaska. Sounds like they're not here. Melchin, Nevada.
Present.
And I'm here. Seebeck.
Present.
Thompson from Florida. Here. Wire from New Hampshire.
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to go down now to the next section. Same deal. Benner from the LNC.
Present.
Bowman from Michigan.
He's coming in the lobby right now.
I'll mark him present. Eiler from LNC.
I am here.
Joel from Georgia. Joel from Georgia. Is there a member from Wyoming?
No, there's not. They were
Okay.
supposed to appoint one, but they have not. And I don't see
Okay.
Mr. Shaw on the list at all.
All right.
Mr. McCo's just arrived though.
Sorry about that. Yeah, no, I had some tech issues and I had to restart real quick.
All right. Where is that? What name was that?
McCo's Alaska.
Captain from Michigan. Cliff from Alaska. Matt from Illinois.
Present.
Redmond from New York.
Here.
Roaming from PA.
Here.
Veldhuizen from LNC first and Virginia second. Actually, you're Virginia first now.
Here.
Carlos, LNC second.
Yes, I'm here.
Let's see, alternates Edwards from Georgia. We already have Veldhuizen. Marinovich from Colorado. Osborne from California. Goodley from Colorado, second tier. All right, we got. All right, those are all done. I believe that's the roll. I will fix those into the relevant categories here in a little while.
Gonzalez of Colorado not listed either.
What is he?
Third alternate.
And you said not here?
I don't see him anywhere, no. Mr. Choko, to answer your question in the chat, I thought we had been informed by you at the first meeting that Mr. Kraus had resigned from the committee.
Mr. Kraus told me that he resigned. I'm not aware that I have the authority to remove, Virginia's appointment. If I just came on here and said that Veldhuizen resigned, would we just remove him?
No, sir.
I mean, in practice, he's gone. I'm just wondering if that was communicated by the state officials.
I haven't seen anything on that.
Okay.
So could you do us a favor, sir, and before the next meeting, confirm that for us?
I'll do what I can. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
I mean,
Appreciate it.
He's gone. He's told me straight up that he's gone. I just haven't had any communication from the state party chair or anybody on the state committee about that.
Yeah, probably need to get some official communication on that just to
I'll see what I can. I'll see what I can make happen.
All right, thank you, sir. All righty, I think that concludes all the roll from what I can read here. We have.
Wait, how many other guests?
4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. We have 18 out of 20 primary here. I read, of course, Wyoming vacant, and I see Mr. Shaw from Georgia is not here, but neither is Mr. Edwards as alternate. So there's no fill-in on those. So we have 18 for a quorum. So we're good to go. Next item on the agenda, public comment. I know there are some members of the public here. If they wish to be recognized to speak, please do. I see Mr. Latham.
Hello, Mr. Chairman and platform committee members. So I'm Rob Latham, lifetime member. I just wanted to encourage the committee to consider picking up where we left off in Reno. We had a really good proposed platform item on family autonomy to update the parental rights plank. I can paste a URL into the chat, but also I was just seeking guidance on how to submit that to the committee for reconsideration. It seems like we had some consensus to make this a minority report, and we just ran out of time. So
to answer your question, Mr. Latham, it is on the agenda to pick up with the 2022 proposals that were not heard as our first item of business after the minutes.
outstanding. Then I will leave it there. Thanks so much for that information.
All right, Mr. Bowman, welcome. Go ahead. Hold on one second. Mr. Montoni, Ms. Cliff has just entered.
The U.S. military has been responding to the deadly attack.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Bowman. Thank you.
I just wanted to verify, first of all, did you get me on the roll? Because I came in like 5 minutes late and you're already doing it. Okay, you got me in there. Okay, just to make sure. I guess my only comment would be going into things, because I haven't really gotten into the bare bones of proposals other than one about the debt. That was one that had been shared by email. I think we have a lot, and I think I did watch the video of the meeting I missed, and the gist of it seemed to be that a very optimistic person thinks that we might get to 8 planks, and perhaps we can count on maybe 5. And so I think part of this is going to be ranking what we really think is important, and perhaps just for starters, so that people have some flexibility, getting into a top 10 and then ranking them and having an order that we go in based upon what we think is probably most agreeable to all of us and most important for the body first, and then go on down from there as far as how it would be presented at the convention. Another thought I had, and I've seen other committees do this because I, as a member, had received emails with surveys, is probably we'd have to wait really until the states had made their delegate selections. But once they had done that, so we're talking maybe late March, sending out a survey of what we have got narrowed it down to, and then have the prospective delegates rank them as far as what they like the most, so that we could put those first, having the most likelihood of success. And perhaps, the most controversial ones you want to kind of watch out for, because it might end up taking up the whole 90 minutes if you have people debating and amending amendments and so forth, which does happen almost all the time to some extent. So that's all I really need to say right now.
Okay, I'll get to Ms. Tewksbury in a moment. Just to address a couple of things. There has been discussion on the bylaws committee of coordinating with this committee to do some surveys relating to our various committees' works. I would ask Ms. Harlos if you wouldn't mind to elaborate on that a little better than I could.
This hand smashes the monster Steve into a nearby wall.
Oh, I'm sorry. What did you need from me?
I was asking if you could elaborate a little bit on the discussion that's been going on about coordinating some surveys with both this committee and the bylaws committee.
Well, I don't know if I necessarily said that. I might have been unclear. Let me just fill this committee in. You're aware of all of this, Mike, but this committee necessarily isn't. The way the current LNC works is on an editorial calendar that gets scheduled like a month out. And for us to get any kind of communications out to party members really has to be scheduled well in advance. The bylaws committee is at survey point, and the bylaws committee has so many proposals that we don't want to anger members by like shoving 30 proposals in their face, but are going to do them in bunches. That already did not play over well because I just asked for basically 4 emails that can't be fundraising emails. So in order to try to make the sugar make the vinegar go down a little bit easier was I said, well, maybe in those emails, if the platform committee has something it would like out, it can go in that same email. It's not saying there has to be something, but I will keep Mike updated when a bylaws committee email is going to go out in case platform wants to piggyback anything on it. Because they, right now, staff and the party chair zealously guard these party-wide emails. We are already sending out a lot right on the brink of too many. So I've got to really fight for those spots. That was all that was about, was that if credentials committee wants to say something and platform wants to say something, we three got to get together, because otherwise the party chair is going to say no.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Harmless. Ms. Tewksbury, thank you for your patience. Go ahead.
Am I muted? Sorry, I thought it was unmuted. So I was wanting to just ensure that you guys looked at, I think it's 3.4, free trade and migration. The last sentence kind of looks like we are calling humans capital that need to be moved across borders. So I was just hoping that maybe that could be reworded.
That is one of the things we're going to be looking at here shortly.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, is there any other public comment? Is there anything any of the members of the committee wish to bring up in public comment that's not necessarily related to items on the agenda? Mr. Ensor.
So two things. One, I just wanted to let you know that I have been considering a couple of other proposals that I haven't posted them because I figured it would be best to wait until after this meeting because it would be too short notice. The planks that I'm looking at, they do have a couple of proposals already. So I guess my question is, not only how many is too many, and also how many proposals for the same plank can we have? Because I'm sure people are going to have conflicting ideas, especially the one that was mentioned about how a plank can be amended. So my question is, how many different proposals can we entertain, and also how many different proposals for the same plank can we entertain?
Okay, two very good questions. To answer the second one first, how many proposals for a plank can we entertain? We can entertain as many as we wish. However, that also introduces the possibility that we can merge proposals within a plank. Like, for example, if one proposal wishes to make a change to a first sentence of a plank and another proposal wishes to make changes to the third, we could possibly combine those. That's just a simple example. As far as how many proposals overall, we can fit in. Ideally, because we have the convention hitting at Memorial Day weekend, if we are able to kind of wrap up proposals towards the end of April to give us time to go through, organize, and get the report in the form that we want it to be as a committee, that would work well. So I would suggest that, and this is up to each members of the committee to decide, but I would suggest that proposals be submitted no later than the end of April. I hope that makes sense for everybody.
Well, it certainly makes sense to me. And the idea of merging proposals, I was actually wondering if that would even be possible, but I wasn't sure how to word it. But that's good. Okay,
it can be, and I might steal some of Ms. Harlow's thunder here ahead of her, but There will be the option to do substitute motions and dividing of questions and merging all those pieces together as they arise. Ms. Harless.
I'm sorry, I'm super distracted and kind of in a bitchy mood, so I'm apologizing right off the bat. Are we still in public comment?
Yes, we are.
Okay, I got a little lost. I had a question for the secretary of the committee. It are am I just is the full LNC complement here, or am I a voting member? I didn't catch that because I came in late. And I did have something else after that. I didn't hear Mr. Montoni.
Mr. Montoni?
I can go over the roll call here. Move on to your next thing while I do that.
Okay, certainly. The next thing was again realizing that technically that I'm an alternate. I just don't know, what my position is right now. I would hope we have submissions in earlier than April. We're dealing with the reality of 90 minutes. And I don't know whether this will happen or not, but Mr. Seebeck is aware that the bylaws committee was hoping to do kind of a mock convention at some point in April with presumptive delegates to try to practice our arguments and see how votes may go so we can refine arguments and maybe decide to drop proposals on either committee. Again, I don't know if that's going to happen. That's kind of like a stretch goal, but the bylaws committee is going to do it whether the platform committee is ready or not. But I would love for this committee to be ready as well, which means pretty much the proposals have to be in earlier than that. Let's really keep in mind we need to do 90 minutes. And while combination proposals work semi well with bylaws, they tend to always get divided on platform. So again, the committee's going to do with whatever the committee's going to do. But I would really recommend not combining proposals on platform. I've been a 3-time platform committee chair. It never works out. So I see Mr. Montoni said he sees 7 LNC appointees here. For some reason, I don't.
Hold on. 2, 3, 4.
But I could be missing it.
Benner, Eiler, Montoni, Seebeck, and Brooksbank.
Okay, yeah, good. I'm an alternate. Perfect.
Yeah, alternate is Harless and Golden. Yeah.
Thank you.
I confirm 7 also.
Thank you.
Thank you for the reminder about the mock convention. I had forgotten about that. Mr. Brooksbank.
Yes, I would like to echo what Ms. Harlow said. I mean, for a lot of us, we've had months to prepare for this and to think of proposals and get ideas and things like that. So I think a much shorter time frame of a deadline would be in order.
Well, I think the point is well taken. I was suggesting the end of April because I didn't want to deny any member of the committee a chance to submit proposals, but the points about timing and both in convention and a mock convention, as well as getting everything organized, are very well taken. So I would further suggest shoving that deadline back into March, either the end of March or mid-March, just because. I also want to point out that while I have put up a lot of proposals in the drive, I don't want this to be a me and everybody else show. I just have a lot of ideas to throw out there. It's not a hurt feeling if we decide not to go with any of those. That's okay. It's not about the personality. It's about doing what's best for the platform and the party. So we're gonna do the best we can, and we're gonna try to make this happen. And I hope everybody's gonna help us get there. So, thank you, Mr. Brooksbank. Any further public comment from anybody, members or otherwise? Okay, hearing none. The next item on the agenda was the minutes from last meeting. Mr. Secretary, Mr. Montoni, you have had them up in the folder, am I correct?
Yes, sorry, I couldn't unmute for some reason. That's correct. They are in the folder. Does anybody need the link again? Yes, no.
It would be good if you had the link, you could put it in the chat.
All right, give me 20 seconds, I'll do that.
I would request that members of the committee review them before the next meeting so we can make sure that they're correct. And although I think they're pretty close, and so we get them approved then. Standing by for a moment. All right, well, Mr. Montoni is getting that up there. We're going to go on to the next item on the agenda, which is the carryovers from the last platform committee. As you all know, we did not get through everything in the platform committee in Reno. There were approximately half a dozen proposals that were not heard because of time and because of lack of megaphones and lack of wall time to work with it. So we have those available, and I'm going to share my screen momentarily here. I've got to find where I put them here. The ones to look at for this meeting I have currently sitting in the shared drive in the proposals draft folder. That is the same level as where the 1, 2, 3, and 4 folders are located. I just moved them up there for ease of finding instead of going all over the place. So those include the carryovers from the previous convention. So I'm going to bring up the first one, which is space exploration, and I'm going to share my screen momentarily as soon as I get to the right place to do it. And let's see, where did it go? There it is. All righty, can everybody see my screen?
I don't.
It seems black to me.
Okay, I'm getting a spin wheel. Hold on one moment, folks. It might be my computer being a little slow.
It appears to be loading.
Yeah, it says that it started. There it goes.
Oh, there we go. Apologize for the slight delay, folks. There is a small minor detail here, which is just a format issue, and that's that. All righty. The plank, this is unchanged from the last convention, from the last committee. So just to waltz through it real fast, problem statement says platform doesn't address state control of space exploration and use. Private space service has supplanted government-sponsored space service in several key areas. What was once a matter of science fiction has become reality. Offside a comment. Where's my Death Star? New innovations from private companies include better reusable rocket designs and efficient cost-saving measures. These advances by the private sector have injected new interest into space exploration and made possible missions which were not possible a decade earlier. Increasingly, it appears that many space service exploration will in the future be driven by private industry rather than by NASA. NASA may be always have a role in space investigations, but in the near future, private industry and organizations may set the pace for exploratory as well as routine space missions. Solutions add a plank to address space exploration. The benefit would be allow us to communicate to the public that we welcome a new space age for private orgs and individuals without the government regulations. The new plank, and this is exactly what it was written as it was written before, says space exploration. We oppose all government restrictions upon voluntary peaceful use of outer space. Yeah, list the platform, Mass Platform Committee as a sponsor because this kind of really came from them. I would point out to the committee, we are not obligated to carry over anything from them. It is our choice. Speaking personally, I don't like to leave things left over like that if we can get away with it, as a matter of respect for the previous committee's work. So the motion at the moment is to, the main motion at the moment is to add this plank into our report. Is there a second to the motion? Mr. Bowman has his hand raised.
If I want to amend the motion, do I need to have it seconded first for the body to own it?
We don't. We will need seconds because we're under small committee rules. So, as I gotta keep reminding myself. So, do you wish to make an amendment, sir?
Yeah. I actually pasted in the chat an amendment, and actually, this is just to give context. This is a plank that we already had in the Michigan platform. So the first part, I think, is pretty much the same. We oppose all voluntary restrictions on voluntary peaceful uses of outer space. But then we had added the clause, though this does not absolve launch providers or payload owners of damage they may cause to others. And I put that in there. We had put that in there specifically after discussion of the fact that there's certain conduct that people could use in the course of space exploration that would be especially damaging to other launch providers, which would be a form of aggression and specifically contributing to something called the Kessler syndrome, which if there's anybody who is really heavily into things that could happen with space, with especially in low Earth orbit, might be more aware of that. So anyway, that was the clause we had in there. It's in other words, kind of saying, no restrictions, however, be responsible, basically in so many words.
Are you moving to add those words in?
Yes, I'm moving. Actually, the language that I put in the chat is what I would like to substitute, or I suppose we could just add the part after the comma I have there. This does not absolve launch providers or payload owners of damage they may cause to others. In other words, they're still responsible for the consequence of their actions.
All right, that is the motion to amend. I put it in there and highlighted. Hold on a second. Where did there it is. Apologies, I was looking for my scratch. I see Ms. Harlos and then Mr. Cholko.
I'll be very quick as an alternate. That's what peaceful means. I would encourage us not to multiply words. The longer things are, the less likely they are to pass. This was debated thoroughly on the past platform committee. That's what peaceful means. I'm going to give the example. I call it the Star Child example. With all due respect to Star Child, if we were going to have a ferret plank, that we start listing what diseases the ferrets can't have. I mean, please, let's not.
All right, Mr. Cholko.
Ms. Harlos pretty much just said what I was going to say. I mean, I just think these are unnecessary words. I agree with the words, but I don't think they add anything to this plank. In fact, I think they just kind of make it more confusing. Basic libertarian principles tell us that that people or entities are responsible for any damages they may cause and shouldn't be causing them. We don't need to just repeat it here in a plank that's about eliminating government restrictions. Just talk about the elimination.
Thank you, Mr. Cholko. Mr. John Thompson.
Yes, thanks. Just to repeat, at the risk of repeating, this was debated thoroughly last year. I don't think this additional language adds anything to the plank itself. And I would encourage the other members that we think to economy of language and not add words to these planks. We want simple statements, I believe, as simple statements as possible that gets our point across as eloquently as we can. Thank you.
Mr. McCose.
I'll keep it short. I agree with everything that was just said in response. I'll be voting against this amendment. I urge you guys to do the rest.
Mr. David Thompson. You're muted, sir. Excuse me, David Johnson. I apologize. Sir, go ahead. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. So my question here, because I wasn't around for a previous committee, what reference do we have in terms of background from people in the industry on this? What input was there? Because that would be something I would want to consider when voting for this, whether we did due diligence by talking to people who will be affected by this, or we're talking super high level principles and not really considering the logistical considerations. For example, orbital issues with people occupying or conflicting orbits, things like that. Does this language work for them?
I can answer that question because I am in the industry. I've been in the industry for a good quarter century, and there was discussion on this in the last committee. There was some debate regarding it, and it came to the conclusion that the peaceful use of outer space can be resolved without government restriction or regulation. We've already seen that with operations like Starlink and some of our private launches. The question of orbital slots for satellites can be a little more challenging, but there's already a large stacking going on up there. The biggest concern up there right now is space junk, but that is primarily the fault of all these government launches. And if there's a private way to clean it all up, that's just being researched and worked on in the private sector, as well as other countries internationally, then we're all in favor of that idea as well. So it was discussed and quite a bit in depth. I apologize for being a little bit of a ringer in the room on that, but we did go through it.
Thank you.
Okay, I see Mr. Ensor, and then was Mr. Thompson, then Mr. Alstead. So Mr. Ensor. Mr. Bowman. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, yeah. This is I'll start off with a quick point of order. Maybe this was clarified last time, I forget, but is calling the question and calling all questions in order under the rules that we're operating on?
No, it is not.
It is not? Okay. Then I'll lower my hand.
Mr. Bowman, then I thought Mr. Alstead's hand was up, but it looks like it went down again. So, Mr. Bowman?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, and by the way, I appreciate that you're into industry. I might be talking to you offline after that. Yeah, I want to distinguish. You see, normally when I think of peaceful, I think of not deliberately aggressive. And so, for instance, yeah, a non-peaceful thing would be deliberately targeting someone else's satellite and crashing something into it. That would definitely be violent. That would be perhaps an act of war in some cases. On the other hand, what if I'm smashing my satellites, my own, into each other, or abandoned non-claimed space junk, and I'm smashing my satellite into theirs? Now, as a part of the industry, you would know that does create, and you have mentioned the problem of space junk, all that debris is an indirect act of aggression, though it wasn't violent in the sense of seeking out war or something like that. It's still creating a hazard in the region that could make space unusable for the other people.
Alrighty, Mr. Alstead, did you want to say something? You had your hand up, then you lowered it.
Oh yeah, someone was asking about people in the industry, and so I was going to answer, but you kind of answered the question first. So
okay, fair enough. Just looking at the chat for a moment. Mr. Alstead does work for SpaceX. So he says I'm the vice ringer. Well, I've been all over the place in the industry, so he tweets their own. Ms. Eiler asks, wouldn't that all be covered under existing property rights plank? Technically, yes, because we don't exactly stick an altitude limit on the property rights. And then Mr. Choco asked the question, should the government be decided of who gets to ram satellites into space junk? Usually it's the other way around, but let's see, one more message. Yes, that's Mr. McCoy. Okay, Ms. Farlos, go ahead.
One reason I wanted to be an alternate on this committee was to give some historical perspective. First of all, I would encourage everyone on this committee to remember that national platform committees are way different than state platform committees. In states, you have your insular groups and you have a real unique state culture that isn't the same nationally. National, it's the brevity caucus. Adding extra words is never a good idea on national. But also, there's a whole history to this space exploration thing. And I'm going to harken back to the not the Dallas Accord, excuse me, the Portland Massacre. The rallying cry for the Portland Massacre was that we had a moon plank. And anyone who's from that time will remember how utterly embarrassing some people thought that was. And it turned out we were ahead of our time. But what made the moon plank such a target is because it got so detailed and started talking about Lagrange points and all of this thing. We add this language, it ain't passing. I already think the chance of it passing with the minimal language we have is not very likely, because I think party old timers are going to remember the moon plank. However, remember the death penalty plank in 2016. I, for once, I was thrilled it passed. I literally cried on the convention floor. But if you remember, the language that came out of the platform committee was a hot mess and had all of this qualifying language, which probably most of us wouldn't disagree with. But you want to know what passed? Was a simple sentence proposed by Whitney Bilyeu. It was a 7-worder, and that's what passed. If we insisted on all of this qualifying language that came out of the platform committee, we would still not have a platform committee plank, a death penalty plank today. I do think it's important we talk about space exploration. I think Elon Musk has proven that. Let's get this in the platform and worry about qualifying language later, because I think it's going to be tough enough to get this to pass, honestly, just historically.
All righty, is there any further discussion on the amendment, further debate on the amendment? Seeing as there is objections to this, we will now move to a vote. Mr. Montoni, when you are ready, please take a roll of the delegates, the primaries.
Mr. Chairman, we are voting on the amendment, right?
That's correct. The amendment is what you see on the screen highlighted. I will read it off. It just adds after outer space a comma, and then the words, though this does not absolve launch providers or payload owners of damage they may cause to others.
Mr. Chair, which of the alternates are seated in the place of primary committee members?
According to what I'm seeing here, nobody. The only primary member that was as absent as Mr. Shull, and for Georgia, and his alternate, Mr. Edwards, is not here either.
I'm going to use the attendance list. I think I just lost something here. All right, all set. All set, not here any longer.
Point of privilege, Mr. Montoni is very echoey right now.
There's nothing I can do about that, unfortunately. Is Mr. Alstead still here?
Yes, yes, he is still here. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Were you?
Which I'm your vote.
Are you calling for my vote? I didn't.
Yes.
On the amendment.
Yes, I vote no.
Barbour?
Nay.
Bergman?
No.
Brooksbank?
Brooksbank votes no.
Choco?
No.
Johnson? From Texas? LaGree?
Hey.
Leatherman?
No.
Opposed?
Nay.
Melton?
Nay.
Was that an A?
Correct. No.
Okay, I'm voting. I'm not voting. Jack?
I'm not voting.
Thompson?
Yay.
Weir from New Hampshire?
Nay.
Banner?
No.
Eiler? Is Eiler still here?
Is Eiler, you're muted.
Ender? Ender still here?
Yeah, I'm here. No.
Can you see the vote, Mr. Chair?
I'm sorry, say again? I'm not, chair is not voting.
No, I asked if you can see the vote in the minutes doc.
I do not have that.
This
I'm not
is-
looking at the minutes doc at the moment, so.
This is Carrie Eiler. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I vote no.
All right, Mr. Secretary, what is the total?
I see. I see 17 no's and 2 abstentions.
Did you get my yes vote? I don't remember hearing my name called.
Who's that? What was your name? What's your name, please?
This is Scotty Bowman. I was the mover of the amendment.
All right, so 17 no, I see 17 no, 1 yes, and 2 abstentions for not voting.
That I think is not correct because we only have 18 voting members. So I believe it's 115 and 2. Because Mr. Bowman voted yes, I was a non-voter. I believe Mr. Montoni was a non-voter. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, then everybody else was a no, so that will put it at 1 and 15 and 2.
Okay.
All right, so the motion fails. So we are back to the main motion, which is the original sentence. We oppose all government restrictions upon voluntary peaceful use of outer space. Further debate on the main motion. Is there any objection to this being adopted?
I object.
Okay, there is an objection. Therefore, we will move to a vote. And go ahead, Mr. Montoni, whenever you're ready.
Alstead? Alstead from California? Can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Mr. Alstead?
Yes.
Your vote is yes?
Yes, Mr. Secretary, he said yes.
Or?
Abstain.
Bergman?
Yes.
First Bank?
Yes.
Coco?
Yes.
Enzor? Enzor from PA?
Aye.
Johnson from Texas?
Yes.
Labrie from Colorado?
Nay.
Leatherman from New York?
Yes.
Opposed from Alaska?
Yes.
Nelson from Nevada?
No.
I'm going to abstain, Mr. Chair.
Please call me last.
Okay. Thompson from Florida?
Yes.
Weir from New Hampshire?
I vote no.
Banner?
No.
Eiler from the LNC?
No.
And Bowman?
Yes.
Chair will not be voting.
All right, so you're an abstention. Or NV, actually.
Yes, sir. Not voting.
See 10 yeses. Correct me if I'm wrong. I see 3 abstentions or not voting. And I see 5 noes.
Confirm those totals, 10 to 5 with 1 not voting and 2 abstentions. The motion passes. So that will go into our report. One quick moment for me, please. There we go. Okay. Do the next one, which was also proposed at the previous committee. New plank. It was listed as 2.15 algorithm. Quick question, because I closed that window. Can you guys see the new one up?
I see it.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure if shifting windows like that was affecting the screen sharing. Okay, simple, straightforward. We had no plank on agorism, so there was a request to the last committee to add one. This was a previous proposal. I believe it was proposal number 15 in the previous committee. So the proposal reads as follows: 2.15 agorism. Is it agorism or is it agorism? I always get that wrong. But somebody correct, make sure I'm correct on that. Anybody?
I think it's agorism.
That's what I say too.
I'm not sure, so
But
I'll
the
go with
market is called Agora, so who the hell knows?
okay.
Whatever it is, let's not debate
No,
this.
that's only for my own sanity. But anyway. All right, we have it says as follows: we affirm the right of individuals and businesses to subvert government regulation, taxation, and restrictions enacted by executive order through black and gray market activity, so long as such activity does not violate the individual rights and liberties of customers or community members through theft, fraud, or violence. So the motion which I will make is to add this proposal into our report. Debate on the proposal. Ms. Harless.
Yeah. I can't move amendments, but the moon thing, I know we had space exploration, but I'll forever call it the moon thing. I think this could be shortened. I think that whole last phrase can go. And it can say, we affirm the right of individuals and businesses to peacefully subvert government regulation and continue so on and so forth with a period after activity. Makes it simpler. Kind of like we just did with the moon plank. Now, I can't move that, but I am suggesting that for somebody. Otherwise, I just encourage everyone to pass this. This was super popular and it would have passed the last convention, but we just ran out of time. And there are several states that already have this in their platform, Minnesota and Colorado for sure.
All righty. I have Mr. Barber, Mr. Ofstad, Mr. Bowman, Mr. Thompson, and Mr. Johnson. Mr. Barber.
Yeah, I was wondering if somebody could provide a definition of what that word is, because frankly, I've never heard of it before.
I'll open that up for anybody on the floor who wishes to answer.
I think the language itself more or less says what it is. My experience with people who are self-described, I've heard it agorist, but who knows? Self-described as such even goes a little bit further, where they actually refuse to participate in elections, even because they believe that that is still even, I guess you call it microaggression. Even adding another name to the ballot costs a little more money to buy ink and is taxed from people. I've heard that one. So it does go a little further than what it says there. Obviously, we're not going to tell people not to vote for ourselves.
Does that work for you, Mr. Barber?
I guess for now it's kind of strange though. Like I say, I've never heard of it before.
It's a, if I may, it's a polite way of saying bleep the government.
Well, we're all for that.
Well, that's true. Mr. Alstead.
I'd like to kind of echo what Karen or Ms. Harlow said. I would go further. I would probably be voting against this. I don't think anything in this is particularly groundbreaking. This is all things that we discuss elsewhere in the platform. We're against regulation. We're against, we're okay with black and gray market activities, but we're limited by individual rights and liberties. It's all kind of boilerplate libertarian stuff. And I don't think we need it in our platform.
All right, thank you, Mr. Alstead. Mr. Bowman?
I agree with Carrie Carrie Ann's suggestion of reducing the size of this. It did strike me as being a bit wordy, and yeah, put a period after activity. I think she had suggested sounds okay to me.
Are you moving that, sir, as an amendment?
Yeah, I'm moving that as an amendment. I know my amendments have a good track record.
Please restate it, just so we can capture it.
Put a period after activity and strike the rest after it.
After black and gray market activity? Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I just want to make sure I'm getting it right here. So doing a strike through in Google's documents is a nuclear pain in the behind. So I'm just going to do that and highlight it in red for the moment. So that is the amendment at the moment, is to strike that. Debate on the amendment, but before we get there real fast, let me make sure I've got first I had Mr. Thompson, Mr. Johnson, Ms. Harlos, and Mr. Brooksbank. Did you all still wishing to speak on the main motion?
I will use my turn to speak to second that.
Is that Mr. Johnson?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Just so, because we're jumping off of that. Mr. Bowman, do you wish to speak to your amendment?
Yeah. And I do agree that you could probably find some of this language elsewhere in the platform. And so I think if someone brought up, well, what if it violates individual rights of others? We already agree that we shouldn't be able to violate the individual rights of others. And however, I'm not sure there is language elsewhere in the platform specifically supporting people. We may be against the regulation, but supporting people's rights to violate the regulation carefully and secretively or whatever, to subvert the system that way. I don't know if we actually have anything that explicitly says that. So this might add something. That's all.
Alrighty. Is there anybody who wishes to speak to the amendment? I see Ms. Harlos and Mr. Brooksbank. You had hands up prior on the main motion. Do you wish to speak to the amendment?
Yes.
Then go ahead.
I encourage us to vote for this amendment to break Mr. Bowman's wonderful streak on amendments. But I would also encourage people that if this amendment passes, that someone else go through and insert the word peaceful before, or peacefully, before the word subvert, that was kind of the intention, to boil all that down into one. And just to answer the question as to someone who had asked, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the name, as to what agorism means. It is from the Greek term agora, which simply means the marketplace. And back in ancient times, it was pretty free for all, Wild West. So that's what the word means. I know there was some question as to whether this is already dealt with elsewhere, but that's the main motion. I'll raise my hand again for that. If we get to that point, I encourage everyone to pass this amendment, but also do that secondary amendment when appropriate.
I have you in the queue for the main motion as well. Mr. Brooksbank, did you wish to speak to the amendment or the main motion?
Yes.
To the amendment?
To the amendment.
Go ahead.
I was gonna, is it proper at this point to amend the amendment?
We still have one layer of amendment available.
Then I would amend it to include peacefully in between the words to and subvert.
Okay. I would suggest waiting on that until we address the deletion first, just so we're not getting two different pieces crisscrossed here. Just as a matter of keeping it cleaner.
Okay.
But I'll put you in the queue for the back for the main motion as well, because you were there before. Is there any further debate on the amendment? Is there any objection to the amendment? Hearing none, the amendment passes. So we will strike these words. And we are back on the main motion. Now, before we went to the amendment, I had in the following order. I had Mr. Thompson, Mr. Johnson, Ms. Harlos, and Mr. Brooksbank. Mr. Thompson, you had your hand up, then you lowered it. Do you still wish to speak to the main motion?
No, sir.
Mr. Johnson, same question.
I will go ahead and move the wording that Mr. Brooksbank proposed to add peacefully between to and subvert.
There we go. Got to move things around here. All right. Is there, yeah, that sounded really good. My apologies. Is there debate on the amendment? Seeing none, is there any objection to the amendment? Seeing none, that will go in. Okay, take the highlight off. All right, we're back on the main motion. Mr. Johnson made the amendment. Ms. Harlos, you were next in line at that point.
Okay, wanted to address an objection before that this is dealt with elsewhere, that we're against regulation, so on and so forth. Yes, nowhere in our platform, which surprises me, do we encourage civil disobedience. And that's what this does. And that's the way society changes. And by encouraging civil or saying we affirm the right to civil disobedience against aggressive policies, I do think that's a statement we need to make. Just being opposed to something is easy. There used to be something on the LP site that said that laws that just can no longer be enforced, like they die on their own kind of thing. And I think we need to start encouraging, rather than just us, each of us having a podcast saying how bad regulation is, to actually get out there in the real world and peacefully resist. And I think the more times we can say peacefully is going to be better for the party. I think sometimes our types of parties who attract anti-government types can also attract violent types, and it protects us from the state. But in saying it's okay to do this, it's highlighting that it's wrong for the government to not have us do this, to say that it is subversion. We are a subversive movement. Thank you.
Okay, I had Mr. Brooksbank and Mr. Chatterton that I'm going to speak on this. Mr. Brooksbank?
Nullification is a thing. And, whether it's jury nullification or if it's states nullifying laws, we can nullify laws as well, and to echo what Karen Ann said, it's, civil disobedience should be in the American nature. And so that's why I'm going to vote for this.
Mr. Chatterton.
Thank you. I was curious about the language that's present, enacted by executive order. I would ask, I'm not a primary, so I guess I can't offer amendments, but my general feeling would be, are we opposed to unjust regulations, taxation, etc., only when it's authorized through executive order, or just in general, and maybe that language could be stricken?
It's a fair question. I can say this: they're going to take my gas stove out of my hot dead hands. To give an example of an executive order and a regulation situation that's happening recently to try to screw around with the American homeowner. However, I would argue here that the restrictions mentioned here is directly tied to executive order. Regulation and taxation are not. They're established through elsewhere by the nature of how this is written as a list.
Is that intended to be limited just to that word of restrictions?
I believe that is the case, yes.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to speak on this for a moment. I have a question for the committee because I was looking at this a while back and I had a really crazy thought for it, and that is, would ignoring government regulations, taxations, and restrictions be the same as subverting them? And when I'm thinking here, I'm not sure about this. This is why I'm throwing this out for a question. We can ignore regulation by simply saying whatever. We can ignore taxation by doing cash. We can ignore restrictions by, again, just blowing it off. But is that the same as subversion? Is it a type of subversion? I would love to get some feedback on that idea. Hang on, I have got to write some names down here real fast for the queue. And I have Mr. Benner, Ms. Harlos, and Mr. Alstad in that order, and Mr. Bowman. So, Mr. Benner.
I've lowered my hand. I cancel my raised hand.
Ms. Harlos.
Ignore. I think I was going toward your question. Subversion's a much more active, positive, defiant term than ignore. I think I could probably come up with examples of ignoring that aren't subversion, but subversion's a much more active word, and I think covers it.
Okay, thank you. Keep in mind, I was not proposing an amendment. I was trying to figure out if it would make sense or not, but I appreciate that. Mr. Alstead?
I think Mr. Bowman's in the queue before me, so
I have him actually after you, sir.
All right, well, I apologize. I thought he was up first. Anyway, I just want. I think this question you asked about subversion and ignoring gets to the heart of the question of what agorism is, because I've seen people describe it as simply living your life ignoring laws, and other people say it's intentionally going out and breaking laws, like not just living as if the government isn't there, but intentionally trying to defy the government. So Of the two, I prefer the subvert. But I think that gets to the heart of the question of what actually is meant by agorism.
Thank you, Mr. Alstad. Mr. Bowman.
Yeah, two things. First, I'd like to answer your question, but then I was going to follow it up with an amendment. To answer your question, yeah, I think I can ignore certain laws I disagree with, but then what happens is if I'm truly ignoring them, I'm actually acting like something's legal. It might be more like civil disobedience in the sense that I might get arrested, whereas subverting is like you're breaking the law, but you're doing it in a way that is going to allow you to continue doing it rather than simply getting busted and making a statement by being a victim of government arrest. So that's how I see it as different. Now, the amendment I'd like to make, however, if it's in order, is it in order to make an amendment now?
It is.
Okay. I actually, after looking at it, agree with I think what was the sentiment expressed by Mr. Chatterton, which is I don't think inclusion of the word executive order is necessary. And I think actually it's stronger without it, because without it, one can assume we're also talking then about any other form of restriction on peaceful activity, including bad legislation, for instance. There's other ways in which this stuff gets imposed. In fact, bad legislation is a common way it gets imposed. And I don't think you necessarily care about the avenue by which these restrictions are happening so much as what they are and that they exist. So I'd be for striking the word and the words enacted by executive order. So it just reads and restrictions through black and gray market activity.
Is that a motion, sir? Mr. Bowman, is that a motion to amend?
Yes, there was a motion to amend.
Okay.
Can we have the text of that, please?
I'm sorry, say that again, please.
Never mind.
Okay, the motion at the moment is to amend by striking the words enacted by executive order and the comma. So I have at the moment, just before we proceed, I have Mr. Bowman, Mr. Brookbanks, Mr. Johnson, and Miss Harlows. But all I have those listed for the main in the queue for the main motion. So for the amendment, is there debate?
Yes.
Ms. Harlows, go ahead.
I don't know if anyone else who was ahead of me wants to talk to the amendment.
I have Mr. Brookbanks and Mr. Johnson. Do either one of you wish to speak to the amendment?
No.
No.
Yeah, I still wanted to talk to the main, but I'll wait for it. I think deleting executive order is a bad idea. This was born in the height of COVID, where that's where most of the things came through. Why would we want to take that out? I think everything else is covered under government regulation. Somebody said something about like bad legislation or something like that. That's government regulation. The idea in these planks is to try to cover, the platform's supposed to evolve and deal with current pain points, and executive orders are such a current pain point that I think it's a huge mistake to delete it. Thank you.
Alrighty. I believe Mr. McCose is next.
Yes, I would just like to echo what Miss Karen Ann said, she just said. I was just thinking the same thing. Like this was it came out of the height of COVID, and if we remove it, it would remove those pain points, and it would also. I do understand that it is implied, but it's also not really completely listed elsewhere specifically. And that's the whole point, is that we're saying that this is the importance, is that specifically is why we were also just suggesting it. So I would urge the body to vote against this amendment.
Alrighty, I'm going to speak, as I put myself in the queue for this real fast. I'm also going to speak against this, partially to echo the COVID sentiments. I would very clearly recall that certain states were using executive orders during the COVID situation to declare business winners and losers based upon what they were able to sell. They were effectively causing businesses to fail because they weren't, and I'm finger quoting here, essential enough for what the economy needed during the panic and the shutdown. And there were some cases where they were literally, in some cases, Michigan was an example where Governor Whitmer there was literally saying that stores could not sell garden seeds, but at the same time, which doesn't make any sense, but at the same time, they could not go and get food because of limitations on COVID from the grocery store. It was ridiculous. It was insane. It was outrageous. It was maddening. And I don't think we should lose sight of that by striking this out. Mr. Chatterton, you're next, and I have Mr. Barber, Mr. Melchin, Mr. Bergman, Mr. Labrie, and then Mr. McCose. Go ahead, Mr. Chatterton.
Thank you again. I was going to add just that my original question was based on a misreading of the structure of the text, and I think after the initial clarification, I agree as well with keeping it. I was interpreting that as a modifier on all three of the prior words. And when you pointed that out, regulation and taxation, I think, are causing are covering, acts of Congress, et cetera, and restrictions by executive order is covering a unique category of everything else. And I very much agree with the sentiments echoed by others in support of keeping that.
All right, Mr. Barber.
Yeah, good evening. I also would have to echo what most everybody else seems to be saying here, and add to the fact that as far as I know, everywhere in the country, all of those restrictions during that period none of them were law. They were all just actions. I know for certain that there was probably about a half a dozen court cases in Ohio where where specific businesses had been shut down by local health departments, and the court said no, they did not have the authority to do that because they did not violate any law. So that's a really good point, that those kinds of restrictions in this situation were not law at all.
Okay, I had Mr. Melchin, but his hand is down. Do you still wish to speak to the amendment?
Sure, I'll speak to it. I understand in the opposition to removing those four words outright. I guess my thoughts are more including executive order, but getting it away from the ambiguity that it currently induces, and changing it to government regulation, taxation, restrictions, and executive orders. So I guess I'm sort of partial on this. I am in favor of changing the language, but not necessarily strictly dropping those four words as is proposed.
Okay, Mr. Bergman?
In reading this language, including the four words, this goes back a lot further than COVID. Is this saying that individuals and businesses, if the president were to issue an executive order demanding them to turn in their gold to the Federal Reserve, or to close down banks, are we saying banks should peacefully subvert? Is that what the implication of this agorism plank is?
I think it could be interpreted that way. I mean,
Thank
we all
you.
know that Nixon was wrong to take us off the gold standard. And we also know that there have been plenty of times where there's been executive orders issued by governors or the president in the past that have just been totally out of line with our rights. So, yeah, it's more than just COVID. And yes, I would argue that businesses have the right to tell them to pound sand. Um, I can, again, to bring up an example, Colorado, my own county, when I was living out there, had a mom and pop restaurant on the Eastern Plains who basically told Governor Polis to go pound sand about his shutting restaurants down. And he told the county board of health pound sand about shutting down. People came out, myself and my family included, to support them in that effort and give them some business, good food, by the way, and make a stand. And the government did back down. So this goes to all levels and all varieties of individual walks of life, businesses, the whole 9 yards.
It's pretty fundamental. And, you know, for instance, this plank would argue that people can ignore the president if they, as they did in the early 30s, they told people to turn their gold into the Fed. So that's how strong this is.
Right. Mr. Labrise, you were in the list, in the queue?
I retract.
I'm sorry?
I took my hand down. I retract my comment.
Mr. McCose, you were next in the queue.
I did not mean to have my hand still up. It was trying to, I think it got re-raised when I meant to raise it myself. So nothing for me.
Mr. Enser.
Yeah, I'm actually going to speak in favor of the amendment. Everybody seems to be speaking as if us taking this out means we're not saying that we would oppose restrictions enacted by executive order. I would say that what we would be opposing is broadened in scope, and it would include restrictions enacted by executive order. I know people are saying that that it's read as it's meant to be a modifier on the last word. I think that's a little ambiguous. It's hard to tell, and I would like to cite what Ms. Harlow said earlier, which is brevity. And I'd say if we can clear it up, broaden the scope of what is meant to oppose it with some extra words, by eliminating some extra words, I think we should go for it.
And next, Ms. Harlos.
Yeah, I don't think it's unclear. I think basic grammar structure and using the Oxford comma makes it very clear. I don't see an ambiguity here. And again, people have a lot of pain points over executive order. I think we're all starting to repeat ourselves, and I'd hope we get to a vote.
Mr. Chatterton.
I apologize. My hand was left up by accident.
Alrighty. Mr. Brookbanks, your hand's been in the raised for a while. Were you still wishing to speak on the main motion, or did you wish to speak to the amendment?
The main motion.
Okay, we'll keep you in the queue. Is there any further debate on the amendment? Okay, to reiterate, the motion is to strike the words enacted by executive order and the comma. If it's approved, it would change the main wording to be, we affirm the right of individuals and businesses to peacefully subvert government regulation, taxation, and restrictions through black and gray market activity. I do believe, but I will ask the question, I believe there's objection, but I will ask it, is there objection to this amendment?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, I figured it was, but I wanted to get it on the recording. So we will move to a vote. Mr. Montoni, whenever you are ready, sir. Who's Mr. Oh, there he is. Mr. Munt, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. You're a little echoey, but we can hear you.
Okay, I'm looking for Alstead from California.
Yes.
Alstead was a yes.
Yes.
Barber, Ohio.
No.
Let's see.
Yes.
Bergen, Illinois.
No.
Michigan.
Did you call my name?
That's Mr. Bowman.
Senate Bowman.
Yeah, okay, I could barely hear you. Yes.
Brooks Bank.
No.
Coco.
Abstain.
Eiler.
Yes.
Inzer from Pennsylvania.
My vote is yes.
Hudson from Texas.
No.
LaBrie from Colorado.
Yes.
Lebanon from New York.
Yes.
Those from Alaska.
No.
Elton from Nevada.
Yes.
Not going to vote. Feedback.
Chair is not voting.
Compton from Florida.
Yes.
Wire from New Hampshire.
No.
Have I missed anyone?
Yeah, I think you got everybody.
1, 2, 3. 9. I see 9 yes votes. 6 no votes. And 2 non-voting. I'm sorry, 3 non-voting. No, I'm sorry, this is the state abbreviation. Never mind. 2 not voting.
Confirm the motion passes. So the words have been stricken. Take them out. Okay, we are back to the main motion. And I had in the queue for the main motion, Mr. Brooksbank, Mr. Johnson, and Ms. Harless. Mr. Brookbanks.
I'm lowering my hand. I'm sorry.
All righty. Mr. Johnson, you were in the queue for the main motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say, as somebody who works social media, normally outside of that capacity, I would think this plank is a little bit redundant. As somebody who works social media and looks at the platform as an example of our messaging and messaging that we can lift and publish, this is an excellent piece of messaging that we can lift straight out of the platform, put out there. And I can think of 20 times a year where this would be a great quote we can just straight drop as our message on issues. And I think that will be even more true going forward as these COVID-like measures become more frequent. So I'd encourage the committee to adopt the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Ms. Harlos.
something that was raised earlier that I just wanted to bring up again. Obviously, I'm in favor of this with or without the language we struck. I think it's a fantastic plank. When we got into that whole ignore thing, or that whole thing, everyone was concentrating so much on the word subvert that they didn't read the last few words of the plank, which is talking about actions, not merely ignoring, encouraging people to engage in black and gray market activity. That is what makes it agorism rather than merely ignoring. And I think that's really important and another reason why we need to pass this.
Alrighty, is there any further debate on the main motion? Okay, hearing none, I will ask the question, is there any objection to the main motion?
I object.
Hearing an objection, who was that, please?
Ben Weir, New Hampshire.
Thank you, sir. We will move to a vote on the main motion. Mr. Secretary, whenever you're ready.
Allstate, California. Allstate, California.
Oh, no.
Arbor, Ohio.
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Berlin, Illinois. Bergman, Illinois. Let's
No.
skip over them for the moment.
No, sorry.
I think Mr. Bergman said no. Is that correct?
No.
Michigan. County Bowman, Michigan.
Yes.
Lindsay. First Bank, LNC.
No.
Virginia.
Yes.
Tyler, LNC.
No.
Indore, Pennsylvania.
My vote is yes.
Huntington, Texas.
Yes.
Breathe, Colorado.
Yes.
Lebanon, New York.
Yes.
Macomb, Alaska.
Yes.
Melton, Nevada.
Yes.
And I vote to not vote. Mr. Seaborg.
Chair votes last.
Johnson, Florida.
Yes.
Where? New Hampshire.
No.
Mr. Chair.
Chair will not be voting.
All right, Mr. Chair, I see. Eleven yes. 5 no. And 2 non-voting.
confirm 11, 5, and 2. This will go into the report. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, acknowledging we have 20 minutes left, which is still a good amount of time. We will go into the free trade and migration plank. This too was a carryover from the 2022 convention for proposals 16 and 17. It was a bad mash of proposals back then. We went around quite a bit trying to come up with a solution that created a whole bunch of shifting and moving. It really wasn't, my opinion anyway, a good answer. So I've taken that and I've kind of reworked it a little bit to try to clean some of this up a little bit. Ms. Tewksbury in public comment mentioned the concern about the wording of unrestricted movement of human and capital and human and financial capital across borders, and that was a very poorly worded thing, which could have been meant, and this was greatly debated in the last committee about could that mean human trafficking, which we definitely do not want to be in favor of. That is so unlibertarian, it's almost not worth discussing in some ways. So worked it a little bit, and if I can get it so I can read it, there we go. I apologize, folks. I have the screen in front of you that you can see, but I also have the chat window in one corner and the participant list in another. So I'm kind of juggling space here a little bit best I can. So we can move this all as one piece, or we can divide it because there's 4 different chunks in here. I'm going to make the motion to put this in play for discussion, and if the committee wishes to divide, we can do so. So the motion will be as follows: to add and delete as I read this off. So the plank would read as follows. 3.4, free trade and migration. We support the removal of governmental impediments to free trade, add the words and migration. Political freedom, add the words economic opportunity with a couple commas. And escape from tyranny, demand that individuals not be, remove the word unreasonably, constrained by government in the crossing of political boundaries. Economic freedom demands the unrestricted movement of, strike human, replaced with individuals, as well as financial capital, add the words and goods, across national borders. Now, I'm making notes on the queue. I believe I had Mr. Bowman, Mr. Cholko, then Ms. Harlos, and Mr. Velhuizen, then Mr. Brookbank. So go ahead, Mr. Bozeman. Mr. Bowman, excuse me.
Yeah, yes, I'd like to amend the amendment to strike the word financial. And my reasoning for that is that it looks like financial is still a carryover from the notion of human and financial capital, which still is putting humans as a form of capital. So, yeah, removing financial would then have the effect of it reading just, the unrestricted movement of individuals as well as capital and goods across national borders.
Okay, that is an amendment that is in order. Is there debate on the amendment?
Mr. Chair, I had a quasi point of order that I don't really have the right to raise as an alternate. So I don't know if you want to indulge me or tell me to shut up.
Without objection from the committee members.
I think the way the amendments being handled is it could lead us into a quagmire considering the topic of this plank. I would suggest that the proper parliamentary way to handle this is to consider it a substitution. And that way there's no arguments over division or anything like that. Mr. Bowman's amendment would still be completely in order, but what you would be doing is actually moving to strike all of the original language and insert in the reworded language, and then Mr. Bowman would be moving to strike financial. I just think we might be getting into the weeds right now, but now I'll shut up. I have nothing else to say.
Alrighty. Okay, is there, excuse me, one moment. Okay, we're still on the amendment. I think we're going to keep it as we're going here. Is there further debate on the amendment to strike the word financial? I see Mr. Velhusen and Mr. Brooksbank and Mr. Choco, but I believe they're all in the queue for the main motion.
Choco is definitely for the main motion.
Okay, is there any other debate on the amendment? Okay, is there objection to the amendment? Okay, hearing none. I'm going to leave that in red because of the strike through problems. I'll fix that later. The current main motion then is what is displayed on the screen. I have Mr. Choco in the queue first.
Thank you. So this is my fifth consecutive time on the National Platform Committee. And this plank, though it has been changed some over the years, this plank is the thing that I've heard from members about the most by a very, very wide margin. I've probably heard more about this plank than all of the others combined. And the thing that I hear most consistently is that people want that word unreasonably removed. This proposal here takes care of that. These other changes here, I think they're fine. I don't care about them all that much, but this takes care of unreasonably, which is important to me personally and seems to be very important to members. And really our job here is to do what the members want us to do. So I am in favor of this motion, and hopefully we will not amend it too much so that I can continue to be in favor of it. Thank you.
Alrighty, I had Ms. Harlos in the queue, but her hand is down.
No, I didn't mean to really put it down. I don't know what I was doing. Yeah, I think this is kind of going to say, I think the one we heard the most about in the past was abortion, but this is the second most. I think part of our job, and I know a lot of people disagree with me on this, is not just to necessarily represent our views or those of our constituents, but what will pass, what I'm going to say is going to be hugely unpopular. I don't think we should touch this plank at all. I think the minute we bring up this plank, show's over. That is what the rest of the platform committee report is going to be about. Practically, I think that's what's going to happen. We're going to be arguing for 45 minutes about what unreasonably believes. I'm open borders. My position is really, really clear. I just know the realities of our convention, and the minute this comes up, we're done. We're done. It'll be the only thing. So, maybe if we put it at the end, and I have to tell you what I'm saying now, because there just seems to be all of this import assigned to my words with all these devious plans I allegedly have, and I'm way too old for. I would suspect, I have not heard of any plans to do this. I am not part of any plans to do this, but I suspect this plank's going to come up for a deletion vote. And I don't think, just knowing who I think is going to be the likely makeup of this convention, that this is ever going to pass, deleting the word unreasonably. It could have, I want it gone. I'm open borders. I'm as radical as they get. But looking at it reality, we've got to decide our priorities, and y'all are going to do what you're going to do. But this is the voice of experience here. Thank you.
All righty. Next was Mr. Veldhuizen.
Yes. I just want, my main objection to this plank is the word unrestricted, because there are reasons to restrict immigration. And we have among us many libertarians, including presidential candidates who are running right now, who are not open borders and who believe, for example, in a invitation basis system of immigration based upon property rights. And one of the proposals is to allow individuals to invite foreign guests in a system where you have land that is owned by property owners, right? So the main problem we have now is you have a government system where the government, we have a lot of common land and government land. But if we move to a private land system, then that wouldn't be a problem. But absent that, the invitation basis immigration system would make the most sense. And this is an issue that's the most important issue, I think, in this election, because you have the Democrats and the Republicans talking about this issue all the time. And currently, you basically have subsidized open borders, where the federal government is paying for people's free housing and free immigration and free transportation. And that's not libertarian at all. So I think this open borders policy is behind the times and really needs to be changed. I know there are other people on this committee who feel similarly, and I'll allow them to voice their opinions as well.
Mr. Brooksbank.
Yeah, as far as the entire plank goes, I'm okay with all the changes except for striking unreasonably. I'm an Ellis Island type of guy myself, but I do believe that there are reasonable constraints that government should put on to immigration. We shouldn't let people with who've been arrested for murder. We shouldn't let them in the country. We shouldn't let people who have served in Al Qaeda into our country. So I believe we should leave the word unreasonably in, and I would like to move to do that.
That is in order. The motion is to remove the striking of unreasonably. Hang on 1 second here. I gotta get to the correct highlighting there. There we go. So that would keep unreasonably in. I would remind the committee we have 6 minutes left in today's meeting. Is there debate on the amendment? I know we could have debate on this for another several hours. Before we go to that, I currently have Mr. Bowman and Mr. Redman in the queue, but I also see Mr. Johnson had his hand up. Was Mr. Johnson looking to talk to the amendment or to the main motion?
And speak to the main motion.
Okay, I will put you down for that. Is there, okay, a debate on the amendment to restore the word unreasonably?
Mr. Chair, I think if I have a point of parliamentary inquiry, I can interrupt, right?
Yes, you can. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, where are we? I thought we had an amendment to strike the word financial. Did we
That
vote
passed.
on that?
That passed.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Fucking pay attention.
Hey, language people, please. Don't cuss, damn it. Anyway. Okay. Is there anybody who wishes to speak on debate on the amendment?
My comment kind of addresses it indirectly. I'm not sure really where to put it. I can give it to you in about 15 seconds.
Go ahead, sir.
I think the problem with this plank is we're trying to combine free trade and migration, two separate issues, and that's what's kind of causing a logjam here. I think it would make a lot more sense to separate them. That's my opinion.
Okay, I will speak to that real fast. There was in the past committee attempts to do exactly that, to split out the trade and the migration and move one of the pieces up into, I believe it's plank 2.8. There was a lot of debate regarding that in the previous committee, and I forget exactly how it came out in the wash with the actual committee report, but I know that it occupied 2 or 3 full meetings discussing all that at the time. It could be done. We could revisit that as well. I believe that the last platform committee report is in the shared folder for reference if people wish to look at it. However, I'm also going to say that that would be something I would suggest discussing on the list. Only because we're running up on time at the moment. So that being said, Mr. Johnson, you're still in the queue for the main motion. I believe Mr. Bowman was also, and so is Ms. Harlos.
No,
Ms.
I'm
Harlos,
on unreasonably.
Are you? I'm sorry.
I'm on the amendment.
Okay, then go ahead. And Mr. John, go fast. Mr. Johnson, were you still in the queue for the main motion?
Yes, sir, but I can make my comment here on the amendment because it's equally applicable. I do think the term unreasonably doesn't add anything. It makes nobody happy the way it is right there because we still have unrestricted movement down there. So it clashes with that. I've never heard anybody say they think that word is great in there. Everything in our platform, the understanding is that there's some sort of reasonability clause to it. When we put it there, when we leave that word there, it just leaves us sounding kind of mealy mouthed. And so I think everybody can be happier and debate better without that word there.
All righty, Ms. Harlos, then Mr. Cholko.
Okay. I do think we should delete it. I know it won't make some people happy with my comments here, but we're all libertarians. I'm not accusing anyone of not being one. I really, really encourage people to read that link I put in chat. If you want to know why I became open borders, it was because of that article, because it made absolute sense. You cannot tie one positive reform to the the elimination of an other. I agree. The welfare state's a problem. It's a separate problem. We don't like the welfare state when it's people born here. By the same logic, maybe we should be limiting families. Or maybe Colorado should stop allowing people from California to come here. Wait a minute, I might have just convinced myself. No, I'm joking. I think it appeals to nativism, and I think it removes our very unique libertarian identity. I know there have been questions of, well, sometimes these immigrants are crossing over into private property, and I have a huge problem with that. But notice that the wording says in crossing of political boundaries. I do think it is a very libertarian. Roderick Long argued this years before me that and I'm not arguing a Georgist principle here, but I'm arguing that there is a human right of ingress and egress, reasonable rights of that, and those are what political boundaries are. To say they're going to be a drain in our system, I'm sorry, that sounds way too much like a Trump talking point. And I really hope we don't go that way. I know a lot of people disagree with me, and I'm really not trying to insult anybody, but I think our advocation of human flourishing and that people are good and not to contract within ourselves into a nationalistic nativist mindset. I don't think that's the right mindset for liberty. And I'll also say this really big, we need a strong border thing. I tend to think it kind of treads on the Dallas Accord a little bit because quite a few of us don't believe in nations at all. Now, I know some people will go, yeah, but open borders is anarchy. No, not necessarily, because the rest of our platform talks about a right to repel aggression. So if, someone's running across the political border yelling that they're going to, blow us all up, well, that's already allowed. But it seems like we're arguing for more government. And I don't think the Libertarian Party should ever argue for more government. Thank you. And I hope I didn't piss anyone off. I love every single one of you. Thank you.
Okay, at the moment, we are at time. I do see that Mr. Chokol and Mr. Alstad are still in the queue, and I believe Mr. Bowman was still on the main motion. Is there a motion to extend time to let Mr. Chokol, Mr. Alstad be heard on the amendment?
I move that we extend time for these people.
And who was that, please?
Mr. Bill Bergman.
Okay, Mr. Bergman's made that motion. Is there any objection to that motion to extend for that purpose?
I object.
That was who?
Carrie Eiler,
okay,
LNC.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. Look, we're going to go, if we go to a vote, it's going to take another couple few minutes to decide that.
Can I just put my hand down and put it back up next week when the meeting restarts?
We can do that too. Mr. Alstad, would you want to be in the queue for the motion for the amendment when we reconvene?
No, I don't need to be. Wherever the discussion goes next week, I'll jump in if I feel I need to.
Alrighty. In that case, I'm not going to have the motion to extend. Mr. Ensler wonders it would be in order to table it. I agree it would be, but I would suggest that be brought up at the next meeting because we are over time. So we will.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Bowman.
I just wanted to say I was wishing to speak on the amendment and I kept waving my hand, but I wasn't.
I apologize, sir. I had you in the queue for the main. I had you in the wrong spot. So we will, when we reconvene next Tuesday, we will pick up on this amendment with Mr. Bowman and Mr. Choko.
Mr. Chair, was there a motion to extend?
Actually, you are correct, Ms. Harlos. There was a motion to extend.
Just because someone objects, that doesn't defeat it. It needs a vote.
Well, wasn't there a motion to extend for the specific purpose of two people talking, and both of those people said they don't want to talk?
That's correct.
That's true.
Which made the motion moot.
Okay.
I think I'm going to call that a moot point on this one, just for the purposes of timing. But Ms. Harlos's point otherwise would be well taken. All right, so at this point, we will reconvene at 8 o'clock next Tuesday. We have Mr. Bowman, Mr. Choko speaking to this amendment. I would encourage discussion on the list in the meantime. I am going to stop sharing at the moment and stop recording as soon as the computer will let me do that. There we go. And we were adjourned at 10:05. We're going to stop recording now.